The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Saturday, the 22nd of August, 2026. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President and CEO of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommy. Well, Mary, the first article, the New York Times is reporting here that Trump nominates Heidi Overton, a top domestic policy aide, for FDA commissioner. So what do we think?
Well, Polly, it's mixed. She's an MD. President Trump calls her a rock star. I think historically we believe that she's a protege of Susie Wiles, who has represented pharma for a very long time and seems to be very close to the pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't look good to me, to be honest with you, Polly. It looks like there's going to be significant pharma control over FDA, as we've already started to see with the mRNA flu vaccine being licensed. So I think we have to watch this one really closely.
I think that's what everyone on social media is saying as well. Michael Nevadakis here in The Defender. Former top Fauci aide pleads guilty to federal charges. Will he flip on Fauci? This is Dr. David Morens, who pled guilty on Tuesday to one count of conspiracy to defraud the US. He attempted to bypass federal record-keeping laws by using his private email account to discuss information related to COVID-19 origins. But we found them.
I'm excited, Polly. This is the beginning of prosecutions, and I believe we need prosecutions to get people to tell the truth. So Dr. Morens was indicted in April on 5 counts, and they've accepted a plea arrangement for 1 count of conspiracy. That suggests that he probably has entered into an agreement to testify against other people on COVID, very potentially Daszak or Fauci. We don't know. It's in a sealed testament, a sealed file. But I think it's quite possible that we're starting to unravel some of the COVID truth. And that's great news. You know, Morens worked directly for Tony Fauci. Tony Fauci, under oath, said that he'd never heard of Morens before, which was an utter lie. So I think it's very likely that Morens is implicating his colleagues.
All right, let's go to the next article. Suzanne Burdick. Judge pauses lawsuit after HHS announces plan to create COVID vaccine injury table. Attorney Ray Flores asked the court to stay the suit for 6 months. The table would increase the odds of compensation for many people seriously injured by COVID-19 vaccines, remdesivir, and ventilators.
Well, I'm very proud of this lawsuit that Ray Flores brought that requires the HHS secretary, when they declare something a pandemic under the PrEP Act, and that then triggers this countermeasures injury compensation program, they actually have to give a table of the injuries that they're going to compensate. And that's never been done by Kennedy or the preceding secretaries. Secretary Kennedy has now said, yes, I will do the table. And we won't really have the draft table probably until early 2027. So the case is stayed until we can evaluate whether the table is a good table. And what's exciting about that table, Polly, is let's say it has myocarditis. Let's say it has blood clots. Let's say it has tinnitus. Let's say it has many of the things that we think it should have. That will give people who suffered those injuries a second chance to go back and petition to this countermeasures program. And, you know, we know, Polly, people have been financially bankrupted by treating their injuries. So this is very exciting, and we will definitely be following that.
Excellent. Okay. Brenda Belletti here. Idaho mum accused of killing twin toddlers pleads not guilty. She says the children died from a vaccine reaction, not suffocation, as prosecutors allege. Her trial is set for January 2027. That's a long time.
She's in jail, Polly. There may be another bond hearing before then, but at least now the process has begun. The clock is ticking. There is going to be a trial. You know, it's the burden of the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she murdered those twins. And I have met her. I have met her best friends. I have met her family. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever, Polly, that that woman did not kill her babies. So we will watch this one very closely.
Okay, Brenda Belletti here. Former ABC reporter Terry Moran says Fauci censored nighttime segment on COVID origins. Terry Moran, an ABC News correspondent for nearly 20 years before the network fired him for violating its social media policies, revealed that the network edited his nighttime episode featuring experts who suggested COVID-19 leaked from a lab so heavily that he didn't even watch it.
He was censored, as so many of our friends and others have been censored, doctors and all kinds of people. So no surprise there. The mainstream media was despicable during COVID. Nothing else to say.
Quite right. Florida law firm calls on all 50 states to investigate trillions in COVID federal aid to hospitals and drug makers.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but we certainly believe that there was all kinds of wasted money and graft and corruption financially during COVID.
Jill Erzen here. United Airlines asked Supreme Court to block class action over COVID vaccine mandate.
So apparently there were 1,000 employees, 1,000, that's a lot, at United, all of whom are trying to be certified as a class for their I think, denials of religious exemptions by United and for COVID shots. And the case, the Fifth Circuit believed that the class should be certified. So to certify a class, meaning that all of these people can bring their claims together, under federal law, you have to have 4 criteria: numerosity, commonality, typicality, adequacy. And it's not clear whether they will get that certification for the class or not. It's a question of whether their situations are all related enough, there's enough commonality. But regardless, individual cases are going to go forward against United. And, 1,000 people, probably, that's a lot of cases. So this is going to be one for us to watch. This is interesting. We also have cases in New York where we are interested in certifying as a class for people who are denied religious exemptions, similar to this one in against United. So we'll see.
I'm going to read out to you the following states that are not following the recommendations from President Trump. And I'm just going to go through the list for you, all right? So New York won't follow Trump's new childhood vaccine guidelines. Kansas sticks with scientific evidence for vaccine schedule, despite Trump's order. Maine rejects new federal childhood vaccine guidelines. Illinois will not change child vaccine guidelines after Trump's executive order. Despite federal efforts to drop some children's vaccine recommendations, Texas requirements are unchanged. That's shocking to me. New Mexico, health officials maintain vaccine schedule despite Trump, and Virginia school vaccine rules unchanged after Trump's order.
Well, I think that just shows us how deeply entrenched policy vaccine ideology is. I'm not really surprised, but it's interesting that that certainly crosses the political spectrum. I think that we just have to keep going, and Trump and Kennedy have to keep going too, and just bringing more truth and bringing more research and bringing more transparency and making it really obvious. These shots are not good for kids, full stop.
Ultimately, all the states that are saying we're not doing it, it is actually at the bottom line, it is the parents' decision, as in, I know you may not go to school or something like that.
I think I talked about that last week. I mean, that part of the executive order is pretty meaningless. I wouldn't have expected them to follow Trump on vaccines. But what's really important, and we sent our letter today, is the Attorney General to go after the states that don't permit religious exemptions and to say there should be maximal choice of parents for vaccination decisions. That's the part that has some teeth, that they can basically start bringing cases and joining in our cases that say this is a violation of parental rights, religious freedom, medical freedom, no informed consent. So fingers crossed. I'm holding my breath on what the Attorney General is going to do.
Vaccine exemptions rate for the kindergartens reaches record high, says CDC.
This is great news, Polly. So in 2020 to 2021, 2.2% of kids entering kindergarten had exemptions of one kind or another. 2025, 26, it's 4.2. So it's almost doubled in 5 years. They're very worried about measles, et cetera. I think it's great. I think we're going to see healthier kids when we stop hyper-vaccinating kids.
Henrik Carlson here in the Defender. Connecticut amended law to avoid religious exemption suit, parents allege.
Connecticut is just being awful here, Polly. So Connecticut, the Democratic majority in the state legislature in Connecticut passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act 20 years ago. And now that same Democratic majority is amending that law specifically to say, but it doesn't cover religious exemptions, which is unbelievable. And so this is this great statement by the attorney in this case, Lindy Urso, saying this is what a one-party system does. They just will go, I mean, this is clearly like they're afraid they're going to lose the lawsuit, so you run and you change the law. And I love this line. He says, defendants did not defeat plaintiffs' Religious Freedom and Restoration Act claims. They fled from it. And that's exactly right. They just manipulated everything they could so that the people who believe that they have a right to make decisions about their children's medical injections, that they couldn't do that.
New York Times publishes op-ed calling for stronger oversight of gain-of-function research.
So this is a good op-ed. You know, the New York Times is still the newspaper of record. So it's important when the New York Times starts to talk about, gee, we better do something about bioweapons research, which is really what gain of function means. It's an op-ed by Dr. Alina Chan, who is an early person criticizing what happened and saying this could well be from the lab in Wuhan. It's a really strong article. It points out that there are already 53 biologic safety level 4 labs in 22 countries. Essentially, there's no good global regulation over this. Gain of function means to increase the deadliness and the infectiveness of agents, you know, viruses, bacteria. Senator Rand Paul, who will be speaking at our September 17 conference, has a bill, the Risky Research Review Act, which would create an independent agency. But as Chan critiques it, it would only cover federal research. She believes there should be a single standard, like for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which would have universal standards in the United States. Chan says, gee, if we don't do anything, we're going to have an accident like, you know, a pandemic style accident before the end of the century. Dr. Richard Ebright, another very important commentator on gain of function, said, no, we're going to have another serious accident before the end of a decade. And Dr. Merrill Nass, our friend, points out that there are, you know, we know of reported to the CDC at least 200 biological accidents per year in these labs. So she believes there should be a ban on gain of function research, which I certainly agree on too. So anyway, it's a really important, I think it's an important area, and I'm glad actually that the New York Times is writing about it.
Okay, Michael Nevadakis here. Did disinformation dozen authors team up with GAVI to target Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential run? Did they, Mary?
Looks like it, Polly. So the Center for Countering Digital Hate is Sayer G, and this is based on some of his work, is what we would consider to be a cutout of the intelligence agencies in the United States and the United Kingdom. And in the minutes of CCDH, it says that they were collaborating very, very closely with GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance. That should have been listed on CCDH's tax forms on Schedule R for work with related organizations. It was not. And the question is why that wasn't disclosed. GAVI gets a tremendous amount of money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He has funded them to the tune of $7.7 billion so far. The United States government, other governments give money to it. GAVI is one of the 2 largest donors to the World Health Organization, together with the Gates Foundation. So these are really big players. And the idea that GAVI, a quasi-governmental organization, is working with this CCDH that talks about black ops, black operations, illegal, potentially violent operations against Kennedy when he was running for president. I mean, it's bad. And the guy who heads CCDH, Imran Ahmed, he is facing deportation in the United States right now. It's in federal court. Haven't heard the end of that story yet either.
This is important, everybody. Children's Health Defense petitions the FDA to ban Tylenol for infants. We have covered this a few times on CHD-TV. Add autism warnings to acetaminophen products for children under 6. Children's Health Defense has filed a citizen petition urging the FDA to pull over-the-counter infants Tylenol from the market and require boxed autism risk warnings on acetaminophen. This is for products for children under 6. The petition cites 31 lines of evidence linking the drug to autism spectrum disorder. Again, as everyone said on CHTV this week, we're not saying that's the only cause of what we're saying.
Oh gosh, no.
It looks like it's
No.
contributing.
No, but there's just really strong evidence, Polly. And our outside senior attorney, Ray Flores, brought this petition based on the research of William Parker. And it's very comprehensive. We just published a book in the CHT Skyhorse partnership about Tylenol and autism. And as the petition points out, you can't really do ethical research when you think that it's causing autism in children. So we should be using the precautionary principle. The FDA should respond in 150 to 180 days. So, 5 to 6 months. Let's see what happens.
Okay, well, Suzanne Burdick, this is very sad. 19-year-old sudden death linked to popular GLP-1 weight loss drug. This is Josephine Nasser, a 19-year-old law student at the University of East London, died while on the popular GLP-1 weight loss drug. A London inquest heard Josephine, a Californian resident studying abroad, suffered a fatal cardiac arrhythmia after telling her family she was experiencing nausea and vomiting. Her California-based doctor prescribed the drug, even though the teen wasn't obese. So she didn't even need it. I mean, no one needs it.
She was a little overweight. She was 19. It's a moneymaker, Polly. It's terrible. And she obviously should never have been prescribed that drug. She had a congenital heart condition called myocardial bridging. And that probably contributed to what was probably a cascade of things that led to her heart attack and death. I mean, I actually did a show a couple of years ago, I think, on CHD-TV with Dr. Michelle Pirro, who called this a preventable tragedy. These GLP drugs, Polly, they're just so dangerous. Not only are they apparently addictive, but they cause dental decay, they cause anorexia. There's been over 150 deaths so far linked to GLP-1 drugs in the UK alone. And it's really, so the article says that 12% of US adults now are on GLP-1 drugs, and they're predicting that the rates of obesity are going to continue to rise. So I'm very troubled by this. I'm very troubled by it.
And we had Dr. Michelle Pirro on Monday talking about exactly this subject. So it's about baby formula. Congressman introduced a bill to clean up infant formula. The bill would mandate HHS to set maximum permissible levels for a broad array of contaminants now found in baby formula.
Apparently 40% of non-organic baby food already has very high levels of toxic substances in it, horrifying kinds of pesticides and other things. And so good for Representative Brian Mast of Florida for saying that HHS should be setting some maximum permissible levels. These are infants. They can't go to the grocery store and decide for themselves. We should at least make sure that we're not putting toxic chemicals in their formula. And, a lot of moms have to give formula. So it seems like a no-brainer. And certainly we know that Secretary Kennedy has been involved in that Operation Stork Speed. So let's hope that this moves forward.
Well, yes, and now let's talk about our conference. Tickets are selling, and this is in September the 17th, and it's going to be in DC, Mary. What else is happening? We've got some great speakers. I know we play every day the video on CHD TV.
Good.
About it. But yeah, still some spaces.
Oh yeah, still spaces, but ticket sales are getting more brisk. People are sort of thinking past the end of August and back to school and coming back to things. So it's Thursday, September 17th, as you said. The reception, the beginning will be Wednesday. We would encourage you to come on Wednesday because we'll start early in the morning. We'll start at 8 o'clock on Thursday, and we'll have you, Polly, and Catherine Paul from Defender. We'll have Brian Hooker. We'll have Kim Mack Rosenberg. We'll have myself. And so we will be speaking, but we'll have then Senator Rand Paul speak. We'll have Senator Ron Johnson. We'll have Representative Paul Gosar, who initiated the GRACE Act to have a national religious exemption across the country. We probably will have a couple other very exciting speakers from the administration or from Congress. We'll have a networking hour because it's important when we bring people like this together that they have the chance to mingle. We'll have our friend Tony Lyons of Maha Action giving a keynote at lunch. And then in the afternoon, we'll really be talking about the role of the media, because we know that media was so critical in COVID in sort of giving this false narrative and in inducing fear and in the propaganda and the censorship. So we're in this post-COVID environment. It's not the same as during COVID, but it's not totally free. The mainstream is still parroting the nonsense. So we're going to have some great journalists, Jan Ukelic from Epoch Times, Lara Logan, who's on her own, but used to be with CBS, CNN, and others. Sayer G, who's on Substack. Sayer's also going to be talking about a new book that he's coming out with in the CHD imprint together with Skyhorse about the Epstein files. The Epstein files are extremely revealing about how Bill Gates and Epstein and others really financed COVID or had a mechanism for financing pandemics. And then that evening, we're having a Defender dinner, Polly, and it's to honor Senator Ron Johnson. And I'm so excited. He's such a deserving candidate to get that Defender Award. There's truly nobody in the Congress who has done more for the vaccine injured community than Ron Johnson. He cares about the people who are injured by COVID. He cares about the childhood people. He cares about sudden infant death syndrome, so-called. And we really want to showcase the good work that is happening in Congress. We wish there were more, but we really want to put a stake in the really good work that is happening. And I know that Senator Johnson is, doing as much investigation as he can on Dr. Fauci and the people at the FDA, Peter Marks, and trying to really figure out exactly what happened. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a great day, September 17th. Please join us. I would love to meet you. I would love for you to be there. There's also an option to sign up and watch online. So, if you can't be there, and we understand you may have obligations, you may not be able to get there, you can watch live, or you can get it so that you can watch it. I think, Polly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you'll have it early, right? You can watch it contemporaneously, but you'll get it. Otherwise, we will, of course, be going out to all of our people, but not right away. We do need to recoup some costs. It's actually pretty expensive to put on a conference in Washington, D.C., but we think it's worth it. And we really hope you can come.
Yeah, we do. It's just wonderful to meet you is the main thing.
Absolutely.
And while we're on that subject, look, thank you to all of you that watch every single day and comment every single day. We kind of feel like we know you as family, the same ones a lot on there. And I know a lot of you listen from your car and various things like that. We see you commenting as well. And thank you for your support, and thank you for your donations to keep CHD TV, the Defender, the legal side, the science side, all these, the technical side, which just never gets mentioned, but they're so important.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, and our EMR department as well. So we're very grateful to you. And so thank you for your donations. And don't forget to follow us on social media over on X, Facebook and Instagram. There's Children's Health Defence official channels up there and CHDTV. And then we have EMR department as well. And shortly to come, the Defender. So
yes,
very exciting.
absolutely.
Lots of growth at Children's Health Defence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week. I'll see you on Monday, and Mary's book club is tomorrow on Sunday. So enjoy that. And I'll see you on Monday.
No, pray big,
pray
stand
big,
firm, never settle.
Quite right. Thank you.
These scientists come of age in warfare technology, right? This is not humanistic technology. This is not how do we all live in peace and have benign use. This is really, these are the people who are trying to figure out how do we kill as many people as possible, essentially.
Yes, and Paul, back me up here, but we think of geoengineering technologies, Mary, as dual use. We have a Dr. Jekyll civilian geoengineer face that the public sees.
Right.
David Keith is a name familiar to many right now. He's kind of a Harvard University geoengineer.
You could spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
So in the end, pollution saved them all.
This here is David Keith. David Keith is a geoengineer out of Harvard University whose program is funded by tech billionaire turned planetary health expert Bill Gates. David Keith runs a scientific research group called ScopeX, which stands for the Stratospheric Controlled Perturbation Experiment, as in perturbing.
Huh? It's an engineering project that would literally touch every living thing on the planet. People are terrified about talking about this because they're scared that it will prevent us cutting emissions.
Right, and also that it's sulfuric acid.
And then you have the Mr. Hyde secret military face, where a lot of this experimentation seems to have been going on since the 1940s without really any public discussion or debate.
All right, so let's move on to the third ongoing phase, the dump phase. What is that about?
The dump phase is once you've pumped the atmosphere full of chemicals, elements, metals to synergistically work with these ionospheric heaters and electromagnetic technology, meaning the physics or the jump phase. All of these things that have been pumped into the atmosphere have to then fall from the atmosphere. They're going to go somewhere. What goes up must come down, right? And they're all going to fall either in the form of precipitation, rain, either being rain, snow, or they're just going to fall down onto the surface of the earth, the crust of the earth, coating all living things with these elements, which of course are showing up in the environmental testing.
Called a conspiracy theorist?
Oh yes, I've been called a conspiracy theorist many times, and my response to that is, it's not a theory. Would you care to look at my data? 375,000 micrograms per liter of aluminum, 350 of strontium, aluminum, 3,700, 61,100, oh good grief, 4,640,000. Yikes! And just lately, we're getting a lot of sulfur showing up. Maximum allowed in drinking water, 50. Government action required to clean things up, 1,000 micrograms per liter. All these numbers should be less than 1. There's a definite connection between how much they spray and how much aluminum, barium, strontium shows up in the rainwater. Absolute, positive, consistent connection.
Aluminum is, from my understanding, one of the most abundant metals on our planet.
Oh, yes.
And so...
About, 4 or 5% of the Earth's crust is aluminum, something like that? Yes, it's very common.
Couldn't that be why it's turning up everywhere, why it's in the soil, it's in the water?
Aluminum silicates and aluminum oxides are pretty much insoluble, and they're bound up in the soil. They're not going anywhere. They're not dissolving into anything. It's also true that the aluminum that is coming down from the jets is in a nanoparticle form, which is the next step above molecular.
Yeah, so we used the term dump, Mary, in two ways. The first is these nanoparticulate metals are being dumped into the atmosphere. And then, as Paul mentioned, they are then dumped onto the earth sooner or later, because as we have mentioned, everything must fall, right? Everything in the sky will fall eventually. But the other way we use dump is dumping the natural, the organic, biological, life itself in all of its beautiful infinite complexity, dumping the natural for the artificial, what geoengineers call synthetic biology, to replace real biology. And the father of nanotechnology, Dr. Eric Drexler, MIT engineer, pioneered the invention of these nanotechnologies in the 1980s and 1990s. And we've seen now for, almost 50 years, experimentation with these very tiny self-assembling technologies and machines. The term nano is Greek, I believe, for dwarf. And when we think about nanotechnology, we're talking about incomprehensibly tiny. 1/1000th of a meter is a nano. Carbon tubes, some of your audience, CHD, I'm sure has heard of what's called smart dust. Eric Drexler himself used the term self-assembling virus, a bacteriophage or phage, to describe these self-assembling tiny machines that could be merged with the natural to create some kind of synthetic replacement. And the term transhumanism really speaks to this synthetic biology that's sort of been at work for several decades now.
I'm Francesca Lehman.
And how many children have you got?
I have 3 children.
And how old are they all now?
I have a 20-year-old daughter who's in the military, actually.
Right.
And I have a 14-year-old son and a 12-year-old son.
All right, so you have 2 stories kind of really, don't you?
Yeah, one shorter than the other for sure.
So your elder son is the one that was injured?
My elder son is my middle boy, and he was injured. He typically developing perfectly fine. I have a photo of him prior.
Oh, wow. Now, he's quite old in this photograph compared to how old is he?
He was just about 17 months. This was about a month before his injury.
So up to 17 months, he's I presume he's fully vaccinated.
He was fully vaccinated. I was, at the time, I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell anyone not to vaccinate.
Look at his eyes, people, like nice and central
Beautiful.
eyes. And so he is completely vaccinated up to this point. So you couldn't have called you anti-vaccine.
Never.
Describe how you were on vaccines.
I was, I guess, pro-vaccine, but I was never one to tell anyone else that they should vaccinate. It was a choice, and for our family, our choice was to vaccinate fully. And I even got him his flu shots, at 11 months, 12 months, and then he got his 12-month vaccines, like tons of them. I have them, like all of those vaccines, boom, boom, boom. After the MMR and all the other ones that he got at 12 months, which were several, Hib and chicken pox and everything that you get at 12 months old.
At 12 months, yes.
The only thing that was different was that he stopped sleeping. Like, he was up all the time.
So he's like hyperactive?
Like hyperactive. And I was actually, right after that, was pregnant with my 3rd child. And I thought, oh my gosh, why doesn't this 14-month-old sleep anymore? He always took naps. Why doesn't he take naps anymore? He was just awake. In the middle of the night, just wanted to play, and he was a great sleeper. Slept 12 hours a night, never had a problem with him. So he was just awake all the time. Now, after each round of vaccines in the first year, he would get diarrhea. And I would think, oh, it must be the food that I made my own baby food. I thought, and people would say, you need to stop making your own baby food. And I'm
and buy jars?
Yeah, and buy jars, because I bet you that's why your son has diarrhea so bad. I'm like, maybe it is. And I just listened. I was like, yeah, maybe I should stop making my own baby food. So I was like, okay. So I stopped doing that. And then the MMR happened, that whole series of shots, chickenpox, all that. Stopped sleeping. And then it was time for his DTaP. And of course, right on his 18-month time to get it, I brought him right in. But, prior to that, he walked early, walked at 10 months, was climbing everything. I have proof that he was climbing up every playground that he could get his hand, knew exactly how to figure things out, climbed up my drawers to get treats out of the cabinet, and was just talking in phrases. We went to Chicago, and with my husband, was there for work, and he loved the city, loved Michigan Avenue, loved the noises, the cars, the everything about it. He would climb in his stroller and say, go for a walk. Like, he just loved the noise. And so when his 18-month vaccinations came around, DTaP was the only thing he had. He got the DTaP.
Just the DTaP? Just
the DTaP on that July day. And right after that, it was not one of those reactions where he had a seizure, he had a high fever, and he was in the ER. It was within a week to 2 weeks, he had these screams that I'll never forget, that I know you've talked to so many parents about, that I've never heard before that or since, that you can't describe to someone who's never heard them. And he would arch his back so violently and stare off into the distance, and he would hold his fingers, straight up like this, and I couldn't console him. I couldn't pick him up. He was stiff as a board. Recently on I think it was an MTHFR site, there was an image of someone who had tetanus in that same position. And I thought, and this was just a month ago, and I thought, was my son experiencing symptoms of tetanus?
Interesting.
I don't know that for sure, but it just struck me as soon as I looked at it that's what tetanus looks like. Yeah. He had just had the DTaP. So
poor boy.
And this would go on for hours, the screams. So then, like the next day and that subsequent days after that, he started to bang his head against walls, doors, floors. He would have these tantrums like I've never seen. He was a happy boy. He did not have tantrums like that. And I thought, what is going on? So I would call the pediatrician and I'd say, he's screaming and he's arching his back, and these screams are in the middle of the night, and I can't console him. And they said, oh, he's just having night terrors. I was like, oh, I never had my daughter didn't have night terrors. I didn't know what they were. And I was like, well, I don't know. The screams are really bad. And they were like, yeah, it's night terrors. I said, okay. So then he started to get, rashes, or the diarrhea happened again. So bad, he was up to 40 diapers a day. Yellow, foamy, foul smelling diarrhea. And I would call the pediatrician. I said, his butt is raw and red and peeling. And they're like, well, get some cortisone. Kids get diarrhea. That it could last a while. It's normal. And so I just kept calling him, like, he really is having trouble. They're like, well, just give him some Pedialyte. Just make sure he doesn't get dehydrated. And so I just kept saying, okay. So and then the head banging was so bad. And they were like, oh, Mom, he's coming up on terrible twos. So, this is common at his age. So every time I called, they would just fluff me off like there was nothing. I'm like, but he never did this before. Well, he's a terrible two. I said, okay. So then he started to bruise all over his body, and especially on the head, where he was banging his head so violently against everything. And I was afraid somebody was going to call CPS. And so I called the pediatrician's office, and I said, he's banging his head so violently that he has bruises on his forehead. And he has it all over his body, too. And then the nurses said, he's a boy. They're going to bruise. He's a boy. He's a rambunctious little boy. And then I thought, there's something wrong with these people. What is, why aren't they listening to me? So then he wouldn't answer to his name. He started not being able to answer to his name. But he always did before, because I would say, Daniel, go get your shoes. We have to go get your sister at school. And he would run and get his shoes and try to put on his shoes, and we'd get in the car, and he was very compliant. And then he just would scream and I would call his name, he wouldn't answer. There was just a blackness to his eyes.
You lost him.
I lost him. This is after. And then his hair started not to grow. His hair wouldn't grow.
That's what happened to Billy. You're the first person.
Really?
I've heard say that.
There's nothing.
And it fell out.
Yeah.
Billy's hair fell out. It's awful.
Yeah.
Oh, bless him, look.
And he looked so sick. And just no color.
Such a sad. Look at that, people. That should be the face of vaccine injury. Look at that. Yeah. Look at that. That you go from. Do you mind me using these photos?
Not at all.
Look. You go from that periscope to that.
Mm-hmm. His hair was
we are vaxxed.
Blonde and silky and beautiful, and
to that. Someone screenshot that, please. Screenshot that picture of this boy. This is just a really, truly sad picture of a boy in pain.
So when parents call their pediatricians and say that my child is different, they don't live, pediatricians don't live in your houses. We live in our houses and we take care of our children. We know that they're different, but you just keep getting blown off. So I knew there was something wrong, but I kept getting blown off, and we didn't live near any family. So when we went home, it was Easter time, and we went home to my hometown, and my brother, who was an educator, he was a teacher at the time, pulled me aside, and he said, honey, please don't be mad at me. He said, but I feel that Daniel has autistic tendencies, and I think you need to get him an early intervention. And of course I broke down, but I knew in my gut, I knew I was right. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't, some random person that doesn't know her child. I knew my child, and I knew he was different. But and I said, I'm not mad at you. Why would I be mad? Someone finally is understanding what I've been saying. So we went back to my town, and I called the doctor. And of course, at that time, Yahoo groups were the only way parents communicated. And there was no Facebook. I wasn't on Facebook at that time. This was 2005, early 2005. And there were other parents that said, this happened, and this happened after, a DTaP or after a vaccine. So I went back and I looked, and of course it was the stark decline happened right after the DTaP. And
And you were such a pro-vaxxer. You so believed in the system.
I never questioned. If there was a sign for flu shots on the door, I marched right in there and said, oh, I must get my child a flu shot. I must, because I'm a great mom. So after that, I started to research, and I thought, oh, wow. And the first book I read was by Karen Sorosi. It was about pervasive developmental disorder. And so, of course, she, outlines everything in there. And I thought, I have this little 6-month-old. I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't go through this again. So I went to the pediatrician's office, and I said, I'd like the vaccine inserts from, what my child is going to have upcoming. She pursed her lips at me, and she turned around and stomped off, comes back, and I'm holding my 6-month-old. And she threw the vaccine inserts in my face and said, if you think you're going to come here and not vaccinate your children, you got another thing coming, because you are not welcome here. And I said, I'm crying, and I said, I can't go through this again. If this was from the vaccine, how in good conscience can I continue to vaccinate my other children if this happened to their brother? And she's like, well, I don't care. She goes, you can go somewhere else, and this was the only pediatrician's office in the town that I lived in at the time. And I thought, okay. And we were moving to a bigger town, Columbus, not far from here at the time. And I said, fine, I'll surely get help in the Columbus area. I said, I'd like a referral to a pediatric neurologist. They didn't even look at my son and said, here you go, take it. After they ignored everything that I called about. And so we moved to Columbus, waited 3 months for the appointment. I get to the pediatric neurologist. And in the meantime, I took gluten and dairy out of his diet. Within 3 days, he stopped banging his head and said, ouch, for the first time when he tried.
Aww.
So, I mean, I never heard ouch come out of the kid's mouth. And he started to bang his head and went, ouch. So I knew this was biological. I was like, he's allergic to, all of a sudden became allergic to everything, so gluten and dairy he ate prior to that. But after the DTaP, he was allergic all of a sudden. So his bowels kind of cleared up a little bit. And so I thought, I'm going to do everything that I can, prior to getting to a doctor. And I had researched Dan doctors at the time. But I thought, well, let me give mainstream medicine one more shot. I get him to the pediatric neurologist at the big hospital in Columbus, and she said, he's not autistic. You need to start a daycare in your house because this child needs more interaction with other children. And I was like, okay. And then I said, well, he's much better after the gluten and dairy free diet. And she goes, that's a crazy diet, and there's no autistic schools that even would accept him if you're on some crazy diet like that. So I don't care what he eats as long as he's getting enough calories. She said, it doesn't matter to me, but that's a stupid diet. I said, okay.
Wow.
So she said, we'll give it 6 months. And she said, he does have a speech delay. You can get him evaluated if you want. I said, I don't have 6 months. Thank you very much. Goodbye. I got in the car, called my husband, and I said, we're going to a Dan doctor. And that's it. And he said, okay. I said, these people are not helping him at all. So we drove 4 hours round trip to a Dan doctor, and he was so sick. The Dan doctor said, it's going to take time for us to get him back to health before I can help you. So of course he, did a lot of supplements, which helped tremendously. And then he was eventually transdermally chelated. We treated him biomedically for a very long time, and it helped. We brought him back a little bit.
Wonderful.
So
now your other boy, let's talk about that. So he had the MMR, yes?
He had the MMR last year. We move a lot. So
last year. So this is new. You're a new convert. Okay.
Well, no, I knew back then not to vaccinate this kid. He was done.
How come you
then we move a lot, and we were living in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. My husband was a diplomat with the U.S. Embassy there, and I actually worked there too. And in Canada, we didn't have a family physician or anything, and I already had a medical exemption for just the DTaP, another DTaP. You can give them every other vaccine, but so I had to fight every school nurse, and get waivers in every state we've lived in. But anyway, so there, I just ignored all the Ottawa Public Health letters, nasty letters I would get in the mail, because I was like, we're only here for 2 years. They'll never catch up with me. For the last 6 weeks we were there, I got a call from the school, and they pulled him out of class and said, your youngest does not have the MMR. He's not allowed to come back in class until he gets the MMR. And I didn't have an exemption for him because no doctor would give him one, because he was pretty much vaccine free. so I just didn't take him to doctors ever. So I went to the embassy and talked to the doctor, and he's like, he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. And I was mentally out of my mind at the time, I guess, and I relented and I gave him the MMR. They kept him in the office for 20 minutes.
How old is he?
He was 11 at the time.
11
years old. So he had never had an MMR.
Okay.
So they were like, we'll keep him here for 20 minutes in case he has an anaphylactic reaction. So,
right. Nice of you to tell me after you've
Thank
given
you
my
so
son
much.
that vaccine.
And then, so he seemed to be fine. 14 days later, he had full-blown measles, head to toe. And so I took pictures, and it was the day we were leaving.
Do you have any pictures here?
I have them on my phone, if you'd like to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see a measles picture.
So I took the pictures into the doctor, and because I thought, well, he's already shedding, I have to keep him home, because I'm sure he's shedded all over Ottawa, Ontario right by now. And so I showed him the pictures, and his mouth dropped, and he said, he didn't know what to say. He said, well, it's too late to have a reaction like that. It can't be from the vaccine. I pulled out the NIH statistics.
Unvaccinated child.
Mm-hmm. And I said, the NIH disagrees with you. I said, it says it right on here from the National Institute of Health, 14 to 28 days is a vaccine, have a vaccine reaction from the MMR. 14 to 28 days. Today's day 14. And he couldn't say a word. I said, I want this documented. I want this reported. I said, you have totally ruined my day. I said, I have to laugh or I'm going to cry, because there were movers at my house at the time, moving us out to head back to the States. And I said, I'm done. I said, I'm completely done with you people.
How did he do having measles though? What was that like?
He was fine. He thought it was great. He's like, I get to stay home. I'm good, Mom. He had a cold, which turned into a terrible respiratory infection for a month, which he spread to his brother. And they had 5 weeks. They had this horrible respiratory infection. And then he seemed to be fine. And then in January of this year, he had a strep infection, and then another strep infection, and developed pandas. So he's not been quite right since then. And he ended up having to have his tonsils out. And I had to beg a doctor to test his strep titers, because we didn't go to doctors. And we were back in Michigan by that time. And I said, test his strep titers. I know he's got pandas.
Was it worse, your child having that MMR?
No, it was not. It was not. So now I'm pretty much a crazy lunatic, and I've gotten them both medical exemptions in the state of Ohio. We found a doctor in the Cincinnati area that will treat them.
They're asking if you reported it to the VAERS system.
I had told the nurse, I said, you need to report this to VAERS, and I'm not sure if she did or not, but I said, you must report this. And she said, I will. So I think they were so shocked that this happened, and I think they would. So, I know where I have it. I have it on Instagram, but it was all over.
Now, have you stopped vaccinating your children now? No matter what
We're
school
done.
or anything?
Before we just moved to this area 3 weeks ago. We lived in Michigan. I missed you in Detroit, so I was so happy that you were going to be here. And we found a doctor in Cincinnati that will give them the exemption, which he did. We just perfectly fine, a DO. So I was very happy. Yeah, and he will never do it again.
No more vaccines.
No. Here's one photo of it. This is his trunk. It started on the neck.
There you go. There's measles caught from the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. So, just so you know, this child had the vaccine and then caught measles, which, by the way, he thought was great fun because he kept some time off school. But that's not the point. The point is here that the MMR is supposed to protect you from catching measles, and lo and behold, there you go, measles from the MMR. Thank you. Now, any advice you want to give the peeps? Anything else you want to say?
I wanted to say, when the pediatricians, a mother knows their children better than anybody. So when the pediatricians fluff you off or say everything's going to be fine, or, oh, he's 2, or, yeah, kids get bruises, or, whatever, you know better than they do. They don't live in your house. They don't hear the screams of your children. They don't see the head banging that happens. So we are mothers for a reason. We know our children better than anybody.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.